Hey, this is Heath Seal with Hollow Ridge Outdoors, and this is my dad, Terry. We're very fortunate enough to present this monster right here. We're going to go into a little bit more detail and story on how that happened, but if you'll keep watching all the way through the end of this video, at the end we are going to do a prize giveaway. We'll have all the details and everything. Just watch the video all the way through, and you may be the lucky winner. Alright, welcome back. We're going to go into a little bit of detail on our big adventure we had in Ohio on the 2016 season. We'll start with morning one. We were hunting the same setup that I killed my 8-pointer in the 2015 season. I was doing the hunting, Dad was on the film, and we started out, of course, in Ohio, the very first thing you want to do when you get set up is grunt and rattle, don't you, Dad? You want to grunt and rattle first thing, and that's just what we did. And shortly after that, we had a pretty nice 8-pointer come in, made a scrape. He was looking for what was going on, and come in. We had a decoy set up out in a field, and he was headed down to that, and I got my bow off of the hanger, hit the stand, and
I couldn't believe that I'm videoing that morning, and I pick up this really nice 8-pointer that comes out from the left of us, and I finally get him in view in the video camera, and I keep waiting for Heath to pull the trigger, and I wait and I wait, and I wonder, I know he can see this deer, I know he's on it, and I don't know why he's not shooting. And then all of a sudden he says, "I believe I'll pass." And I just can't believe that we're letting this kind of buck walk away from us probably 30 minutes into the first morning of our hunt.
Yeah, and the main reason for letting that buck pass, which we're from East Tennessee. You see a deer of that caliber here, it's a no-brainer. But we had run cameras up there months prior to all this, and to going up, and we pulled our cards when we got up there, and we had several shooter bucks on camera. And when you've got a mid 140s, 150 class buck, you're not going to shoot a mid 120s. So that's kind of where we're at on that.
But especially when you're seeing that buck show up on camera day after day after day.
Yeah. So anyway, we passed on that buck. Actually, I just thought about this. Passed on that buck. We sat there for a little while longer. Had a buck come in behind us. Dad didn't get to see it, but it come down the right side of the field. We'd been rattling and grunting again, and of course I don't know if it was the same deer. We just caught a glimpse of horns. That's the thing in Ohio. You go up there, you rattle and grunt, there's going to be something come. So that's why you got to be ready at all times. But we turned. That was our first morning hunt. On the second evening hunt, turned it over to Dad, and I went to filming, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about that.
Well, we went back in and tried to get back in our stand pretty early because you never know. We knew that the rut was in. We knew that deer was moving good, and you just never know when that big one's going to come cruising through looking for that doe. But we got set up that afternoon, and we see several deer that afternoon that coming through, and but unfortunately we didn't see the one particularly that we was looking for. We passed on several bucks that we would definitely have put an arrow in them had we have been in East Tennessee, here where we are located at. But I was amazed this year at the number of quality bucks that we saw while hunting up there. We hunt on a good friend, been a friend for years, Roger Sanders. Him and Janet treat us like family when we go up. And every year, Roger puts us on quality bucks. We don't always connect, we don't always harvest, but he always puts us on quality bucks year after year after year. And just the time to visit with friends is certainly worth the effort up there. But we come home that night after the hunt, unsuccessful. We had the opportunities, but nothing that really appealed to us other than, to me, that first buck that we saw that morning. But we came home that night and was preparing to go back and put a strategy together for the next morning.
Yeah. We actually, we went back, it was kind of funny, we went back to Rogers, and of course he always meets us at the barn, and we discuss everything that's went on, happened, and we pulled the footage of the 8-pointer that morning up, and he was just in disbelief that that I decided to pass, but we didn't know what the future held. Nobody knows that but the man up above. So we sat back in the next morning and hunted. I don't think we saw very many deer the next morning, did we?
We didn't see a lot early morning that morning, but we did see one nice buck that passed through.
Yeah.
We couldn't get him to stop. He wasn't close enough to shoot. We couldn't get him to stop. It was clear that he was on a mission. He had a destination that he was headed to. But he was a really, really nice buck, probably something that I would have shot. We was hunting out of my stand that morning. Heath was videoing, and I was doing the hunting, and I would have probably shot that buck had he have come in. And I was a little disappointed as I watched him walk away, but I had no idea what was fixing to transpire that very afternoon.
Yeah, we had got several bit of camera footage, and when you've spent the kind of money that we spend to go up there and hunt every year, me and Dad had sat down at lunch on that second, I guess it was the second afternoon, and we decided that we had got the footage that we wanted, and we were going to branch off, and he went to his stand and hunted, and I went to my stand and hunted, and the next thing that took place, of course, when you ain't running cameras, it's stuff like this is going to happen. But I'll let your dad tell you about that. So
it was early in the afternoon again. We go into our stands, and I see some deer, but nothing that really appeals to me, nothing that I want to shoot. And right about dusky dark, very little shooting light left. There's some does that come in pretty close to my stand, and I look and I see antlers coming out the ridge from where I'm at, and he's coming right in to where these does are at, which would put him within probably 20 yards of my stand. And my biggest concern was he going to get there while I still had enough light to shoot. And I kept waiting and waiting, and he kept coming slowly, but he finally does get there. And I shoot, and the deer take off and scatter, and I decide to sit for a little while in my stand, even though it is getting close to dark before I get down. And by the time I get down out of my stand, get my stuff collected, it's totally dark by then. But there's just enough light that I can find my bolt, and I get my bolt, and I go back to the barn where Roger and Heath is waiting, And Roger's the one that takes my bolt and looks at it, and he said, there's hair, there's blood, there's meat. We need to go back and see if we can find this deer. So we get our lights and we head back out, and about where the buck was standing, there was a tremendous amount of blood. And we got on a blood trail and we looked for close to an hour, maybe a little longer. And that buck had got into a thicket, and we had to abandon that night because we just didn't have the light and the facility to continue searching for him. But the next morning was going to be a busy morning, as I went through a very sleepless night. As all you deer hunters out there know, when you put an arrow in a good one, this was the best I could tell, a very good 10-pointer. I think we have him on some pictures from our trail camera, and he's just a monster. And so I slept very little that night, but the next morning Heath and I decided that we're going to invest some time in picking up the blood trail to see if we can find this buck. Yeah,
we actually, it's kind of funny, the amount of blood that the deer lost was, still to this day, I have no clue why we didn't retrieve that deer. But we actually there was times that we was down on our hands and knees searching for blood. We'd find drops of blood here and drops of blood there, and we never did find the deer, unfortunately. We're hoping he's still, it's a shame to lose a deer of that caliber, but that's hunting. That's just part of it. And that takes us into our next. We hunted that evening. When we saw deer every morning, every evening we was there, we were seeing deer, seeing bucks. And on Tuesday evening, we had set out. We're seeing more deer in the morning than we were the evening, and we set out on a little excursion that evening. We were going to set up to kind of do some stalking, rattling and grunting, and we walked a pretty good ways and found some good sign. Never think we saw some deer, some does, but we never could get connected with a buck. But I had made my mind up on Tuesday evening that I was going to get my climbing stand and make this journey up the hill, and pretty long. Dad told me, he said, son, you're going to have to leave about 4:30 to get there and get up in the tree for light. So that was the game plan as of Tuesday evening. And then we got to talking to Roger, didn't we? So Roger told us, he said, boys, I believe you need to stick to your guns, to your setups that you've already got. And boy, we're sure glad we listened to him.
Yes, sir.
So we'll take you in to the grand finale here on Wednesday morning. Dad, I'll let Dad tell you the good portion of it, and then I'll tell you the portion when we get to this bad boy. So
we get up early, and we always go out to the barn to where we keep all of our hunting equipment and all, and we're ready to go and get into our stands. And we are already outside, and it was cold that morning, very cold. And it just dawned on me when we walked outside that I had forgotten a base layer of clothing that I had brought, and I knew that in the process of going back in and putting that on, that I was really going to put us behind on the morning hunt. So I tell Heath to just go on and go to his stand, and I'll go to my stand, and because I didn't want to interfere with what might take place at the break of day at his stand. But I get everything ready, and I get to my stand, and I get up in my stand, and it's just breaking day. And I probably hadn't been sitting there 10 minutes at the most, and I could see a doe coming out the side of the ridge, and she came in, and I heard some limbs breaking, and I looked up, and I saw a huge buck coming in behind that doe. And the first thing that entered my mind was, it's still not really light enough to get a good shot on this buck, and and all these visions of the buck that I shot a couple of nights before was going through my head. But that buck came on in, and they milled around there a little bit, feeding a little bit, and the buck knew that there was something not right, and so he turned and started to go away, and I knew that if I was going to take a shot, it was now or never. So I get my bow and up to my shoulder, and I put the crosshairs where I think is a good shot, and I pull the trigger, and I hear that loud pop that a lot of you deer hunters that bow hunt know that sound. There's no other sound like it. But it was a little louder than normal, and there was several deer that scattered, and the deer run off. And so I dial up Heath, and I tell him that I think that I've just connected with a monster buck, a really, really good buck. And he says, I'll be right out there. And I tell him, I said, no, stay put and let me get down and see if I can find my bolt and see if I can find the blood trail. And we'll give this deer a little bit of time, and we'll pick up the trail and go after him. So I come down out of my stand after sitting there maybe 30 minutes, and walk over and start looking for my bolt. I can't find it, and I go on over into a holler and looking for blood, and all of a sudden I hear something coming around the ridge, and here comes a doe. She runs in probably within 20 yards of where I'm at and stops, and I look up, and here comes this buck here, right behind her. He's about 65 yards maybe from where I'm at. And he comes around, and he just stops. And there I am. I'm standing there with a doe within 20 yards of me, and this buck 60, 65 yards up the ridge from where I'm at. But I don't have a bow. I leave my bow at the tree stand. And as I'm standing there wondering what I'm going to do, all of a sudden I hear Heath holler at me, and I can't believe this. So I turn around, and I kind of give him this for him to be quiet, and I tell him, I said, there's a buck up here. I said, ease up here with your bow and see if you can kill this buck. And there's a problem. Heath doesn't have his bow. So
yeah.
You take it.
Yeah, I got down in a creek bottom and walked up. Of course, we're familiar with where each other's stands are, and I knew if I went down the creek, if the deer that he had originally shot was maybe giving it time to expire, I knew if I come up that creek bottom wouldn't affect any of that, and I could pop up right at the stand. So I get there, and his bow's hanging from his string, his pull-up rope there, and his backpack's laying there, and I thought, well, he's out here looking for his buck. So I lay my stuff down, and I take off up to the top of the ridge, and he's down in the holler there, and that's where all this takes place. And I have no clue that a buck of this caliber is anywhere in the area. So I look up in front of Dad, and I say this is going to be very hard to believe, but what we are telling you is the honest truth. About 20 yards, there's a doe standing there, and she's not moving. She's just standing there. And Dad kept asking me, he said, do you see the buck? I said, no, I can't see him. I don't see him. He said, go get the bow. So I go back over top of the ridge, get my crossbow. I come back up, and the doe is still standing there, hadn't moved an inch.
Not moved a muscle.
And I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to, I can't even see the buck from here, and I'm definitely not going to get a shot. So I might as well go down here with Dad, and he's probably about 20 more yards on down the holler. So I just walk right on down through there, and the doe, believe it or not, actually started feeding. And about that time, I looked up in the thicket, and he was facing, I seen this, is what I seen. And all you hunters know, I mean, this right here is a buck of a lifetime for me and for a lot of people. But my heart just sunk. I got buck fever. And about that time, of course, the buck saw me come down there. He knew Dad was there. He knew something wasn't right, but that doe was not leaving. That doe is what helped us with getting him. But he turned and walked out the ridge away from us, and I broke plumb down. I thought this is it. He's gone. He's leaving. And Dad said, "Do we need to grunt? Do we need to do something?" And it was almost as if the deer heard him. That deer turned on a dime and started coming back out the ridge toward us, and there was one opening right there. Dad asked me, he said, "How far do you think that opening is?" And the way we were down in the holler, and it was up on a ridge. I remember it just like it was a second ago. The deer come up through there, and of all places, he could have stopped in the thicket. He could have stopped on the other side of the opening in another thicket. That deer, we didn't grunt, we didn't do nothing. He stopped. It was perfect. And I flipped that safety off a crossbow, and I pulled the trigger, squeezed the trigger, and thought it was 40 yards, which it wound up being 61. And I pulled the trigger, and I heard it hit. And as soon as I heard that, my knees locked up, and Dad had to practically get me up off. I was asking Dad, "Did I get him? Did I get him?" And it was a mess.
Yeah, it's now I've got two dilemmas on my hands. Okay, I've got a really good buck. It's that's been hit very well to give that high kick, and as he went out, and then I've got a hunter here that's I think I'm gonna have to carry out. So we've got a dilemma. But anyway, we decided to walk up and see if we can find the bolt and see blood, and it didn't take us long until we found both, and it was a very good sign. It looked like you just took a bucket and poured blood out. And I told Heath, I said, "We'll find that buck probably within 150 yards at the most, just from the blood sign." But we started walking, and we walked, and we walked, and we walked, and about 2 hours later,
yeah,
this buck stood up. And I told Heath, I said, "We need to back out, because if we jump this buck one more time, we'll probably never find him." So I was amazed that after that distance and that time that this buck was still alive. But we backed out, and we went back to our stand and shedded some of our hunting clothes. By that time it was getting hot. We called Roger, who decided to take the afternoon off from work. He'd come and help us try to find this buck. And so we wait for him at the stand, and he gets there, and we head back out to try to find this buck.
Yeah. So Roger shows up and brings us some water down there. We're about to die of thirst. We wasn't expecting all this to take place, but we get back on Last Blood, where we saw the deer get up. And the funny thing, well, it wasn't funny at the time, but the deer, when we saw him, act like he had not even been hurt. Looked like he just a buck that was, we even second guessed ourselves. The only reason we knew it was him was because that's where the blood was leading, but elsewise we would have thought it was a different buck. Anyway, we got back up and started getting on more blood. We tracked this thing forever. Just blood, just puddles and puddles of blood. And I remember Dad saying at one point, "Boys, he's got to bleed out. There's no way, he's lost way too much blood." And anyway, we kept on, and we got into I don't know what kind of field you'd call that, but a field with some tall sage, maybe, I don't know. We got in on it, and when I seen we got to the field, we thought as high as the grass or the thicket had gotten, we were second guessing ourselves on finding this deer, and like he opened back up. He started bleeding good again, and we found a bed. And remember Dad and Roger both saying, of course, I was pretty much speechless at the time, but I remember Roger and Dad saying that buck won't be far. He won't be far. The blood looked fresh. So anyway, we're going up. We find another bed, probably 10, 15 yards from this. Another puddle of blood. And kept on tracking him. And the next thing I know, come around the corner there, and I see the white tail laying there. And I said, there he is, boys. Well, Roger, he about practically knocked me and Dad both down and getting up there. We was hooping and hollering and carrying on. And Roger bent down, picked him up, and counted him. I'll never forget it. He counted him up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And about that time, I'll let Dad tell you, this is amazing.
About the time he got to number 8, this buck starts getting up. And once again, there we are. We have no bow. So the first thing that goes through my mind, after all of this, big boy, if you go out of here, I'm going to go out of here with you. So I jump on this buck's back, and Heath runs around and grabs him by the head. And we won't go into the fine details of what transpired after that. But anyway, through persistence and not willing to give up, this is the result of the time and effort put into it. And the memories that was made on that day will be memories that will last for a lifetime with my son, and certainly with our good friend Roger up in Ohio. Just a tremendous hunt that the way things transpired is we'll probably never experience that again in a lifetime. But that goes to show you, you know, sometimes people hunt for a lifetime and they never see anything like this, let alone get an opportunity to harvest something like this. But what a tremendous, tremendous hunt that this was. And like I said, memories for a lifetime. You know, a shout out to Roger, who year after year puts us on good bucks. And him and Janet treat us like family every year. And we're thankful, very thankful to have friends like that. Not every day that you can find somebody in Ohio that will bring you in and take you like family and let you deer hunt.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to, before we close out here, I want to give a special thanks to God most of all. Without him, we wouldn't be anything. But to my dad and to Roger, that was something that you don't, it just, stuff like that don't happen. I remember Roger telling me, he said, now boys, he said, regardless of what happened when you shot this deer, if that deer would have fell in his tracks, or he would have run 200 yards and died, it would have been a good deer regardless, but it would have never, you know, been a drop in the ocean to what we went through and the memories to get to this deer. So anyway, I appreciate it, and we're going to go into the prize giveaway, and we thank y'all for watching. Alright, so here's what we got today on our prize giveaway. We've got some Dead Downwind scent spray, the laundry detergent, and the body and hair soap. Awesome product right here. Can't tell you how many times it saved me on some deer from being busted. Good stuff. We've got a tumbler that we're giving away, and then we've got one of our Hollow Ridge shirts. Got the logo here on the front and the back. So here's how we're kind of going to go about doing this. We've got a YouTube channel. You can go on our Instagram page, Hollow Ridge Outdoors, or you can go straight to YouTube and type in Hollow Ridge Outdoors. Watch the video, subscribe, and comment. Now how we're going to do this is once we get 100 subscribers, you leave your comment after you subscribe. We're wanting to know in your comments why hunting means so much to you. What you get out of hunting, why you like to be outdoors. After we reach 100 subscribers, we're then going to review the comments. Whatever comment stands out most to us, then we'll award the winner. So anyway, I appreciate it, and there's more to come from us. Thank you.
Okay, we're back on the chase trying to find a big buck that he shot this morning. We've come approximately, I'm going to say probably 1.5 miles, a little farther, with a good blood trail. But the end results is worth the effort. Let's take a look at this buck that he killed this morning.
Boys, he's a hoss.
What do you think about that? We counted him up. Count him up there, Heath.
I don't know if you count that as one, but we're going to count it anyway.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points. 14, not counting that.
Looks like we got about a 15-point monster out of Ohio here. Compliments of Mr. and Mrs. Roger Sanders, that's been so gracious every year to give us their farm to hunt on. And this is by far the best buck that's been taken off by either one of us at this point in time. Congratulations, Heath.
Thank you.
Job well done.